Hi everybody, welcome. My name's Linda Jackson and this is the second of our SCAP Zoom Writers. We've got some wonderful poets and writers for you this evening from across Scotland, and of course we've got our special guest from outside of Scotland. But I did meet him in Stonehaven, and how happy I was to do that. We've got the most wonderful poet as our special guest, Kevin Higgins. So that's going to be a real treat. So it just allows us to bring this work to you, and also to let one another get more acquainted. So we hope you'll look at this in the YouTube channel, and as of November we'll have live audiences in as well. So I'm going to hand over now to our other host, who's my other wanderlust woman colleague tramping around. Please welcome the fabulous Donna Campbell.
Linda, thank you very much. I thought you were going to call me a tramp there.
Well, that's okay.
I was going to say, I'll take that. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show because we've got fantastic guests on here tonight. And the first guest that I'm going to be introducing is a woman called Rachel McJury. Now, I first met Rachel way back in at Ladyfest. Was in 2001, and yes, we're both performing on the same bill. And ever since then, we've did bits of work like throughout the years, and we've known each other throughout the years. Yeah, Rachel's a very special person, and I'm just going to read Rachel's bio. So this is Rachel McJury. Rachel is a writer, director, producer, and she fulfills all of these roles as artistic director for the mixed art form organisation Confab. And Rachel is originally from Warwickshire, but she's been in Glasgow now for 27 years. She has worked for many years with the arts environment, initiating, leading and managing a wide range of projects, but with specific experience of cross art form events that have brought together poetry, dance, theatre, music and film. And in 2006, Rachel received the Jackie Forster Memorial Pride Award for outstanding contribution to culture in Scotland. Rachel, take it away.
Wow, okay, that was a good introduction I wrote. Okay, so thank you very much for being here. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm going to read just a few sections of a book called Raven, a Conspiracy. So Raven is a shapeshifter in Tudor Britain, who is part of an underground pagan resistance movement. And it's a trilogy of books, and this is from the first book, and actually the first page or so, and then we're also going to hear about how Raven gets her name. And yeah, that's all I'll say for the moment, and make sure that I've got enough time. Okay, so this is the first. It's written in Raven's voice, and this is how she begins telling her story. I don't remember the first time. Why would I? Why would I remember something so easy, so part of myself? And it was easy then, when my own form was not fixed so. My grandmother, I call her grandmother, as she was all the immediate family I ever knew. She was sister, brother, mother, father, grandmother, all in one compact frame and form. I wanted for nothing. I was really tiny, just a few weeks old. She had put me down next to the cabbages that were just coming into bloom. I had been contented, gurgling and chirping to myself, when suddenly there was silence. Only the gentle murmur of the bees to break the peace, And that was when she knew. She dropped her trowel and peered into the basket, seeing what she knew she would see. Nothing. She said at that moment she felt such pride, such joy she had not felt before, tempered by as much fear. Fear for the present. What if she was too late and there was no getting me back? Fear for the future and all that it promised. But mostly, she felt love. Love that she had been waiting for all her life. Love she had always believed in. Love that had come to her in the dead of night with a timid knock and a basket left on the stoop of her door. Before she had ever met me, she had felt me, believed in me and loved me. She said the details had been vague. They always are. And it is always the details that matter the most. But still, she had been waiting. All of that in an instant. And then she knew to follow the bees. They were making a lot of noise, excited. I was enjoying the freedom of my newfound wings. I could move so fast and the world was a blur of colour and scent so strong and heady, it was glorious. At least that's how it's been since, so it must have been then because I cannot remember. She says she did not know how to find me. Would I be bigger than the rest, smaller, or worse, was my talent such I was no different? What if the other bees detected an invader and turned their sting to attack me? What if I fought back? What if my venom mixed with them and a new hybrid of human being was born? But she said a smile soon filled her being. She followed the sound of the bees, their excited buzzing, and she saw them rise up and down, circling. She said she heard them laugh and knew everything was as it should be. A tear of peace and joy rolled down her cheek as she watched the bees teach me their wisdom, saw the way they were ready to catch me if I fell, guided me if I flew too high, the way they laughed with love when I stumbled on an air current and spun in circles, out of control. I learned how to fly before most other things, walking, talking and the like. But then how would she get me back? Should she get me back? But inside her, she had seen such a long future together in human form, not with a resident bumblebee. She did not need to be afeared, for soon I grew tired, came to rest on a dandelion, and then soon came to flatten the dandelion as I regained my human form, my default. The bees danced around my head like a halo or a crown and went upon their way as I fell into a deep and peaceful slumber. She says she gathered me up back into my swaddling, placed me in my basket, took me inside, put me down on the table, took a draught of ale for herself, and sat. She knew my name was Raven, but would not call it me till I claimed it. So that's the first bit. So then a little bit later and a few years on, she's actually just had a bad tantrum because she wanted to shift and she couldn't. So she got into a lot of trouble with grandmother. And as a recompense, she is sent out at night to collect bog myrtle. The moon is bright and the sky cloudless. I will not need a flame. I head into the woodland. After many years of our tramping, a clear path leads towards the forest. Under the trees it is dark, but the moon's light breaks through the gaps, creating a pattern of silver on the earth. It's great fun to dance between the patterns, in and out of the light. Before I get to the forest, I take a left through a less traveled path towards the meadows, which is actually a bogland that gets flooded in the winter. No trees go there, and from a distance in the summer, it looks like a lush green meadow in the heart of woodland until one steps there and sinks there. The meadows will be rich in bog myrtle at this time of year. Collecting herbs and plants for grandmother is one of my favourite things to do, not least because of the wandering, the exploring for a purpose. Night gathering is a thrill as the world comes to life with different beasts. I reach the meadows. They glisten in the moonlight, an island of possibility. I can see the bog myrtle, its eager, hungry heads. I take my knife from my bag, bend down and address the plant. Bog myrtle, thank you for your gift. Gently, I ease the plant from its moorings and with care place it inside my bag. Bog myrtle is a powerful but temperamental plant and will work best when cosseted. I take several plants in this manner, then I spot it, catching the moon's rays. It's beautiful. The moonflower, so called because during the day it closes up, looks plain and dull in sunlight, but by night it blossoms and opens. Rather than taking it in light, it seems to radiate light, an echo of the moon. This will make up for all of my wrongdoings. Grandmother will surely be proud and grateful. It's away in the middle of the bog. Some would be afeard for sinking mud. There is many a tale told and a ballad sung of weary travellers falling prey to a bog on a moonless night. But I am not afeard of sinking, and mud has never worried me, and the moon is bright. I take one jump onto a patch of ground and then another. I'm close now, just one more jump, but it's far. I survey the situation. There is one possible route, but it will be a big leap. The challenge exhilarates me. I can do this. Have I not leapt many, many times before? Is it not one of my favorite games? Without much hesitation, I spring up, but as I do, the ground beneath me gives away, crumbling into the bog, but it's too late. I'm committed and fling all of myself towards the moonflower. I am just a tiny fraction out. My feet do not find the ground and I fall into the bog. I scramble, confused to find nothing solid. Somehow, I right myself with my head facing towards the sky and my feet sinking further into the ground. I wriggle, sinking more. It's not how I expected, but exactly how it looks. If I move, there is nothing solid and I sink deeper, faster. If I am still, I am held and sink slower. I look about. Solid ground is far from reach, and in this light, I can see no branch to grasp hold of. I can already feel the wetness seep into my body through my garments. I will soon be cold. I'm not sure how long I can stay here, and what is worse, I have let my grandmother down again. Tears begin to flow down my cheeks. I want to rise, to twist, but I know I cannot. I look about me. The beauty and peace of the moonlight night seems a cruel joke at my expense. Never before have I felt this about the earth. I think soon my grandmother will know something is wrong and come to look for me. Does she not know everything? If I stay still, surely she will come and find me. Then, without moving at all, I suddenly drop a little further into the mud. I am truly scared. Surely I'm too young to die. My life too short-lived. I feel helpless. This fear goes deep and beyond panic. It is a stone-cold, sober fear that grips every part of my being. Then I hear it. Cutting through the stillness of the night, Raven calls my name. I look up and I can see it's sitting calmly on a branch of a nearby oak tree. I look into its eyes and it gives a long, slow blink. Then I understand. It is within me. It is within me to do so. I can escape this plight. I can escape any plight. I look to the raven. My mouth is almost too dry to speak, but I manage somehow. Raven, thank you for your gifts. And I feel it. The fluidity in my body, the melting and reforming. I feel my body shrink away from my clothing. The wings sprout from my flesh, and before the mud can fold around me, I am in the air, sweeping above the treetops. It is the best feeling ever, the air through my wings, the space after confinement. I sweep back down to the bog, to the trees, and the raven launches from its perch and joins me in flight. We dance and circle around, playing. The raven welcomes me to its world. We are different, but the same. Eventually, my companion needs to eat, so we part company and I take to the skies. I have to explore not just the nighttime sky, but what it is to be me. The night sky welcomes me and guides me through the wonders, cutting through the darkness. When I can fly no more, I make my way home. I think to surprise her, to impress her. Why do I think this? I expect to have to tap on the door to call for her attention. But as I approach our cottage, she is standing by the door, scanning the sky. She sees me approach, waves, and majestically I sweep up to her and hover in front of her before I tell myself, Raven, you are released. And slowly I fall back into human form. I stand before her naked. Her eyes are filled with love and something more than pride. Something like confirmation. You'd better come inside before you catch a chill, she says, and holds me close to her. Inside the cottage, my clothes and bag are rinsed and drying by the fire, the Bob Myrtle bundled on the table. Grandmother hands me my first tankard of ale. Welcome home, Raven, she says, as we clink our glasses. That's me. Thank you. And if you'd like to hear more of Raven, you need to contact Donna, because we have a very, what we call the Raven way of distributing the book. So I'll send you a copy of the book, and if you like it, you send me a gift in return. And that's how Raven gets released into the world. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that. I have read the 3 Raven books, and like I just got so lost in Raven, but I got just really lost in all of the characters, and all the characters just stand up all by themselves, and it's just absolutely fantastic story. But also as well, like I think the way you write suspense and the build up to something really big happening is an absolute joy, because you can feel it in your heart. And I was actually crying at the end of each book, and I don't say that lightly, I actually was. I felt really emotional. So yeah, if anybody, could you hold the book up so as we can see it? Fantastic. There's Raven. So if anybody would like copies of the books, if you get in contact with me, and I'll get in contact with Rachel about that. Highly recommended. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you. So the next poet writer that we have on just now is Mr. David Stakes. And again, I've known David for quite a long time, and it's all again through writing, writing and socialising a bit. And I think Rachel and David, we've all kind of done something together, like years back. But me and David used to do a thing as well. There was 4 of us called Make Things Seen. That was it, and it was a night of music, or like kind of maybe techno music, and music to poetry and writing and that. And it was a great night. But we're going to have to do that again, I think, David, because it was a fantastic night and a fantastic idea. So now I'm going to read you what David sent me for his little biography. So David Stakes aspires to be resilient, kind, and anti-oppressive. He enjoys family, friends, and social work. He has a large collection of sepia picture postcards in the hall cupboard. He loves to run, cycle, and to write. His poems are rooted in his life in garage land on the city's periphery. David Stakes, take it away.
Thank you, Donna. Some lovely memories there. Thank you. The first poem's really about falling in love and then discovering the person is not that person you first thought them to be. It's not about a bicycle. It's called Puncture. I miss red brick Manchester. even the fearful night bus to Wythenshawe, my adolescent dreams of Diana Dawes, Wayne Hemingway old docks and grandad shirts, NHS glasses and the cemetery gate mirth, Viv Nicholson and all that lost money, the Salford Lads Club where we were together alone, I miss his unusable heart, the silent barges on the canal side, death and sweet melancholy, beautiful words and the descent into hurt. You know what? I miss the Morrissey I loved. It's hard to let go. This next poem's, I suppose, my lockdown poem, and it is in fact about a bike. Sabbath Breaker. She scouted the park before everyone was up, chattered to the raging magpies and the indignant rooks. The ethereal robins and the ridiculous tits made chirpy salutations. Squirrels played dare with her. The brazen deer sauntered around like defiant looters. No helmet, just honey-light hair. The lockdown wanderer reclaimed the streets, the sweet hawthorn blossom air. She pedalled and pondered from Downside to Maryland, from the West End to the Queen's Park bandstand. She weaved around the benches and the bollards in the square. Despite her denials, she relished the ghostly glances from the empty coffee houses. She was living motion, a defiant supplicant of earthly devotion. Thank you. This last one's called On the Waterfront. She took him to the Scotia to say goodbye. The low-lit conversation was hung dry. All spent passions were heading for the sea, first flows of migration and memory. Her beauty was all he had left to hold, while other loves churned the waters of her soul. To be and let the river flow, those final moments on the Broomilow. And for all their tears, the river did cry, and for all their loves, the river ran by. Thank you.
But thank you very much for that. I would have loved to hear more of your stuff, because there's just something I think really special about your work. There's a poignancy to it and a stillness. But I've heard other stuff that's really quite like out there as well, and it's just your poetry is very, very beautiful. Yeah, and it's great to see you again, and hopefully I'll see you out a bit more at poetry things and come and do readings and all that kind of thing. Yeah, say yes.
It's been a while, Donna, and I really appreciated the invite tonight, because it has been a while and I need to think about that, but thank you.
Please come out. David, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Now, I am going to hand back over to Linda Jackson, who is going to be introducing the rest of the poets for tonight. Yeah, okay. Linda Jackson.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was just lovely. I really, some lines there, you know, that I love it. I can escape my plight, Rachel. I hope everybody is saying that in January. We can't pay the bills and stuff like that. I was just thinking that was, just love that. I will be giving you a gift for your books. That's it. I'm just sitting thinking, what can I get her? And yeah, I agree, really. There was a lovely stillness, David, as well, with that lovely. I think we need to go Manchester dancing. That's what we need to do. We need to do a bit of boogieing somewhere. I think all of us en masse. But yeah, so unlike Donna, I am going to introduce someone who I've skipped around, it seems, for a long time. Katharine McFarlane was working to do with Paisley, where I was born. And I've recently been writing a lot of things about the Paisley rioters. My mother was a mill worker, and she was a union rep, and she was formidable, to say the least. But so I then I moved up to Glasgow when I was 30, and I've recently, in the last maybe 5 years, probably with my mum being very ill and dying, I've got very interested in looking at some of the mill workers' demands that they were making on the bosses there. So Katharine, I was tentatively coming down to Greenock to do something about that. And then you moved out of there. Then this year I was up in Harris walking about with my wee backpack and with my toes in the water and all that. And I sent you an email about something else after I just drove past where you were in your caravan, I think. So we've never met. So hello, we have to actually see one another in one of these points of contact that's been all internet-like. So Katharine McFarlane is a Skye-based poet whose lyrical poetry is rooted in the history and landscape of the west of Scotland. She was a Scottish National Poetry Slam champion in 2020, and she was placed third in the World Cup for Poetry Slam. Her work has been published in many anthologies, including the Ogilvy and the Aquitas Institute, and her debut pamphlet was published by Speculative Books in 2021. What was it called, Katharine?
It's called Homewards, and Yet Here We Are. Happens to be right here on Tandy.
So I'm going to welcome this wonderful woman, and there she is, Katharine, up there in the Isle of Skye, Katharine McFarlane.
Thank you very much, Linda. And you're right, we have kind of danced around each other, although I recognise some other faces this evening as well. So it's lovely to see everybody. And this poetry by Zoom is a wonderful invention when you live in the north of the Isle of Skye. So thank you so much for inviting me along this evening. And you're absolutely right. I actually spent the whole of last year working as the Inverclyde Culture Collective writer in residence, so based around Greenock, Port Glasgow areas, and I've also done a bit of work in Paisley around that time as well. So although I'm in Skye tonight, the poems I'm going to be reading come from that year of working in Greenock. So put out of your mind all of those hills and lochs and the turquoise seas and picture instead Greenock and Port Glasgow, because that's where we're going. And I worked with some wonderful groups of writers in Greenock and Port Glasgow, and one of the things we were looking at with our Tuesday group was the changes that have happened in Greenock and Port Glasgow, the historical changes, but also the changes that are coming. And like any kind of coastal region, there's a lot of consideration at the moment about rising sea levels and how climate change is going to impact on the local area. So the first two poems kind of draw from our discussions on that, and owe much to the wonderful discussions that I've had with fellow writers. The first one is just called Gullis. The esplanade is quiet, a steady, slow thrum slosh far behind us. We dip Wellington boots in the seeping river, sit riveted on rust iron legs, corroded workers in miniature to our left, still hammering. Bridges built of boats cross the car park, taking ground floor folk to the safety of cars. The esplanade is quiet, been empty, quiet enough for the whir of wings to turn heads. Tiny, black-headed brown bird, hedgerow bird gallus enough in this gull-less world to peck at the final crumbs. One of the things we were looking at was how it's going to change the landscape and the mapping of it. So from that grew this next poem, Cartographer's Ink. Let me make you a map of my hometown. If you choose to use it, open carefully. For the river is drawn larger than I remember, and I fear it laps at the edges of street names. Cartographer's ink collapsing into illegible, bleeding boundaries, blurring edges between what was once ours and what is now yours. Unfold the pages slowly, flatten out creases with a soft heart, forgiving fingers, for it is here where the folds are that we clustered, seeking shelter in the shadow of boundary lines and latitude. You may find us, in the curve of a street or a gathering of churches. Sound out the street names and we'll fall from your tongue. Let me make you a map of my hometown, but know that there is a certain art to cartography, the choosing of ink and symbols, the sharing of secrets in sharp line outline, the leaving of emptiness. So those two kind of grew from our lovely Tuesday morning sessions where we had lots of chats, but our Thursday sessions became quite radical. They were the ones that I was inviting you down to, Linda, to talk about the Greenock riots and the kind of trade unionism, basically, that, and you know how strong that was in Greenock. So we had lots of quite radical chats, and from that grew this poem, which is based in the time. I don't know if you remember that time when they were there was lots of discussion about the new cities. So which towns in the UK were going to become cities, and bless our council in Greenock, they decided that Greenock could become a city, that there was nothing else that they needed to focus on or prioritise, that going for city status was important. And you can imagine that how that made us feel as a local community. So welcome to the city of Greenock. What, too soon? Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love this place. It's just, I've never really felt like a citizen of a city. And I keep trying to find a rhyme for city that's not just pure, well, dirty. I mean, I guess there are parts that are quite pretty. It's just that lately, a lot of it started to feel a little bit greasy. Greased palms, Atlantic crossings from the port with impunity, Terret Quarter, Anno Revisens, Atlanticum impuni. Strange. Impunity. No one yet has explained what this means to me, and there's something here that feels, well, Atlantic with impunity. There's something here that feels a little dodgy, and if I'm wrong, please educate me, but educate me from a place of honesty, because honestly, who among us still believes it was a war over there, nothing to do with me? And I get it. We're not quite sure where to pin our pride. History lied. All of our heroes have died, and it turns out we might have misplaced our faith. Not even St. Jude, patron saint of all causes lost, knows the true cost of this, because I reckon you can only find pride if you've hope to look for it. And I wasn't sure where here to look for hope. After 50 years of it slow dying, disappearing, Thatcher threw us overboard, pulled up the rope, austerity burned the boat, and round here, things are not always what they seem. Just as much as this is not a city. Out the road, you've got Larkfield. Like when you live there, you rise early each morning, skip through the fields in a pinafore like Laura Ingalls Wilder, as if here in the city centre, we might be holding our bags a little tighter, but up in the hills, somehow life is brighter. And the old talk of gardens, cities, green spaces, well, you need more than houses and lawns to make places, is an inside kludgy, a fair swap for services that hold a community, or at the very least, a bus route to get to them. And we keep misnaming. From the green oak to the port with no boats. How can we be a city when we have lost our centre? High streets dying everywhere. Well, newsflash, this goes beyond suspicious circumstances. This town was murdered. And we have been drowning in a river of rain, a river of pain. But see, when there's no cruise ships in, or dignitaries down for an all expenses paid lunch meeting about child poverty or obesity, see then, when it's just people speaking to people, speaking to people, see then the sun is pure splitting the skies, and the poem feeds no one. Pretty allegories lie, metaphors stand idly by as people die, so let's start saying things as we see them. No more wish naming, victim blaming, poverty shaming, game playing. Let's just say it as it is. This is no city, no free port neither. This is a town full of good people trying hard. This is a town full of good people trying to carve a better future. No desire for capital of anything status, just capital investment. In jobs, in schools, in joined up thinking, in shops and homes. Let this town be known as a town where our teachers have permanent contracts so that they can get mortgages to live here in this town. Let this town be known as a place where our children have places to play, training for jobs to stay here in this town. Let this town be known as a place of radical listening, a town where we stand together, work together, a town where the voices of the few don't drown out the needs of the many. Let this town be known for its creativity, innovation, stories and even the odd poem. Let this town be a town we're proud to call home. And the first time I read that, I hadn't noticed there was a counsellor sitting at the back of the room, but it's been requested to be sent to the council now, so something will be done. I've got one very short one I'm going to do from this, which was the first sort of collection that came out with speculative books. So I wanted to give you a wee flavour of that, as well as some of the more radical stuff. One of the things we've done with the Greenock groups was writing inspired by other writers' work. Kevin, one of yours was in there. And so we've been really exploring lots of wonderful writers over the year, and see if you can guess which one inspired this poem called Breakfast. Sun-splintered segments of orange lie drying on a scratched plate of summer sky blue. A memory. Sliding sky between us. Blue plate in juice-licked fingers, glistening sultry, sticky-skinned in the last summer's sun. Firm. Fresh peeled flesh, sweet against eager lips, wordlessly sharing segment after segment. Sunlit, swallow song, sharp citrus air, ear full of your heartbeat, drowning the distant rumble of thunder. And yet, here we are. You have left without breakfast again, slid into the silvery grey beginning of dying days. From the window, I see the tide is turning. By the time I turn seaward, the oyster catchers will be gone. Orange legs tucked for flight. I imagine them lochside, too long a walk for this morning. The heron will be by the shore, wordlessly watching the waves, unblinking. He will let me pass unseen. I have long since lost the urge to shout, to sing, to see him flap his wings, have never heard him leave. Snatching summer sky, I throw orange to the hens, knowing they will only peck the edges, leave it lying paper-skinned, drying for the wild birds. The tide is turning. Dry-eyed, I rub the feeling from my face, watch work-wearied, winter-wrinkled, ringless hands wash the plates. Thank you so much. And Linda, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, wow, that was just wonderful. Oh, the Greenock one. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Greenock. Used to go down there. In fact, my mother, she used to say she would go down there and try and get a lodge. You know that expression, go down and try and get a lodge when the boats were in. And her older brother had warned her if he caught her in the Greenock train, she was getting a hammering. Not allowed to go to Greenock and pick up the men, you know. The mill workers going to Greenock to get the lads. It's hilarious.
I know.
Used to say,
Well,
I used to hear this, Mum, at 14, you know what you did. Anyway, so.
Thank you. And I'd love to hear another time, sit down with a good old glass of wine and get some more of those lovely stories of your mum and the mills. That'd be great. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I think was that some of it sounded like Edwin Morgan. Was that based on Edwin Morgan's work?
Well done. Yes, you got it in one.
It seemed to be a few of his poems, actually. I felt the ones that, the one with the boat out to sea, but also the one with the strawberries. There seemed to be quite a lot of Edwin Morgan references. I loved it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well done. Thanks, Linda.
Thanks so much for that. Anyway, so brilliant. And thanks for coming all the way up from Skye. The next time I'm up there, I'll be there next year. I make my Harris plodding trip every year, so I'll be there now. I know you're there. You'll be wishing you hadn't told me where you are, I'll tell you that.
Not at all. Open invitation to the north of Skye.
Nice bottle of gin, that's me. Okay, so thank you again. So our next reader tonight is a woman I met last year as well, newly when I was up in Aberdeen. I seem to have a kind of elastic band at the moment between Aberdeen and Glasgow. The Wanderlust women are never away from the place, and thank God, because I get a chance to hear this woman read. And it was one of those ones I was just sitting mesmerised really by the whole performance. And I've since seen her a few times, and never once have I not been a wee bit awestruck by the words and also the writing of them. And it was really an honour to publish her first collection, Heaven Knows Why. This is it. It's called What the Fuck is Normal Anyway? And it's got little leitmotifs of what the fuck is normal all the way through. There's every so often. I'm just going to read this. I have to read this. You can just listen to this, Miss Jo. I read this to one of my crazy sons the other day. It was his birthday and we were sitting having a little lunch and he was just coming out with stuff. And I read him this. What the fuck is normal anyway? Nay me, according to my family. So that's the first wee leitmotif and they go through it. Anyway, she's a fabulous writer. She's hails from Aberdeen. She writes in Doric and English. She's won multiple slams, performed all over Scotland, and has been widely published in magazines and anthologies. Northwards Now, Causeway Magazine, Dreich, Beyond the Swelkie. Her work is featured in BBC Radio 4, Show Tongue and Talk, Edinburgh International Book Festival, and in several art exhibitions and short films. I know she teaches at the University of Aberdeen. She works with people to discuss and explore the Doric language. Her past commissions and projects include Look Again Festival, Stanza Poetry Festival, Loud Poets, 10 Foot Tall Theatre Company, Aberdeen Performing Arts, and Across the Grain Festival. We are very, very privileged to have this woman here. Please welcome Jo Gilbert.
Thank you, Linda, for that lovely introduction. So I'm reading from my wee bookie tonight. So this one is called The Incredible Thinking Person. The incredible thinking person is super skilled at blowing up thoughts and feelings to ridiculous proportions, to the point where there's a danger their head may actually burst. Thought follows thought after thought, eating those thoughts and fucking every thought in the skull breeds more thoughts, ties insecurities to childhood memories and what that cunt said 20 years ago, knots them tight, makes them true until the mind is a scrambled ball of wool clawed by an evil kitten into a pile of goo. Kaboom! Brain matter splatters over shocked strangers, faces frozen and wide, unable to believe what they've seen. The incredible thinking person has finally kaput, packed in, spurted their mountains made from molehills over the general population. Trillions of thoughts flop like goldfish, twitching, mouths open, close, open, gasping to be fed. And I'm going to read this. I wasn't going to read this one, but I've just changed it at last minute to kind of, it's very pertinent to stuff that's going on now. The headline reads, scientists discover that trees have a heartbeat. As if this is news, someone we didn't already ken, as if we're nae connected, and Blake hearts need nae bleed to keep beating, as if we're bathing in darkness, as if the sun winna come up, as if moss doesna whisper its secrets to witches, as if wood doesna burn, as if trees care what scientists think. They still print shite like us on dead trees, as if we've never kent the news is a lie. This one, I'm going to do this one. This is called Heart's Desire. Feathers of hope beat strong in most, but never a genuine flutter in mine. I'm labelled other, monster to some. Once, guilt-tripped into a fleeting maybe, but this is not hope. Hope is a powerful force, like the daily gratitude that soars in me on escaping that trap. She said it's what we should do. I disagree. I'm content with different kinds of love. My hopes are not tied up in a white frock, man-made picket fence, or a Pinterest perfect abode. Glamour exists in heels, on red carpets, on complicated, shallow, shiny worlds I choose not to live in. Give me matte, flat comforts and nothing around my neck. Okay, so I'm going to finish with this one because it's one of Linda's favourites. And it's one of my favourites and but I do like this one. So this is called Hankering. I've a hankering, a recht hankering for French toast, but the way you make it. Mine's I turn out spongy, our Dean, nae so good, nae matter my method, using butter or olive oil, time soaking the bread, experimenting with different pans and levels of heat, but never recreating yours. I shut my in. Oh, I can smell it. The chef's kisses, crisp edges, just perfect. Picture my moo opening to eat it, slavering. Watching you, watching me, waiting for my question. Babe, how do you make it so fine? And your best Elvis replies, made with a spoonful of love, mama. You wink out to existence. As I open my in, my heart catches up. I've a hankering, a recht hankering for you.
Wow. I'm so loving this. So loving this wee soiree. And you know, I'm just listening there. I was thinking, Katharine, you were talking there, Jo, about hope being a powerful force. And Katharine saying, which I think was very pertinent, to find pride, you have to have the hope to look for it. That was a fabulous line. I just think, that's what we have to help everybody to try and do the now, if we can. Just things are, but we're doing our bit. We're doing our bit. Thanks very much, Jo. That was wonderful. So again, the next writer and our final reader this evening is a man that I have really never met until this year again. I mean, Donna's got these people that she's grown up with in the poetry scene, and I'm just going, you know, it's just the last year of loveliness for me. So, and this man, I met him sitting at a dinner table in the Northeast, and we were at a poetry festival, and I was eating Cullen skink soup. And I recognised my family's eyes. He's got the very same eyes. I know this is probably inappropriate. I don't give two shits. He had exactly the same eyes as my family. Didn't know who he was. And I thought, oh, this is a relative. I'm always looking for relatives because they all live in Australia. I thought, maybe this is one. And then he said, I'm hungry. And he was Irish. My family's Irish. And I said, get a Cullen skink. And the two of us ate Cullen skink. And that was my introduction to the fabulous poet that is Kevin Higgins. Then it just went on chit-chatting away. And to be honest, it just felt, I had a favourite philosophy teacher. And you know that you're in, I hope I don't embarrass him, but you know, in the presence of an intellect, you know, like a really, and Howell Thomas was like that, my lecturer in logic. God, what a time he had with me. And there I was, just listening to this guy who I thought might have been my brother, in fact, with the eyes. And then I heard him later on reading and realised just, so since then I have, obviously, I leave his book that I bought, Ecstatic. I am planning to buy the rest of them, and I leave it around the house and people love it. I had a guitarist, I was saying to Kevin, had a guitarist in the other night rehearsing for this Billie Holiday, rehearsing for Paris, about the Wonderlust Women are going to Paris and doing a few Scottish kind of things. So I was rehearsing, he was saying him and his girl and getting on now, and I read him a poem from Kevin's book, Ecstatic. He's totally not into poetry, you know, it's just that rugged guitarist, thinks it's a load of nonsense. And he loved it. He could hardly survive playing the guitar after, you know, so I just thought, there's power. So Kevin Higgins is the International Director of NUI Galway International Summer School, amongst many, many things. He's, what I think some of us might be interested in, I certainly am, is the co-organiser of the Over the Edge literary events in Galway, where he has, managed to get many writers through to poetry publications. I went to a workshop with him up there in the Northeast and I loved it. The satire was just booming all around the room. Everybody had such a great time. He's got so satire is a big thing in Kevin's work. He described to me how he'd been a very political man at one time, and he took up poetry to get away from politics, which is hilarious if you actually read his work, and the whole way he sends a lot of them up. He has 5 previous poetry collections before Ecstatic: The Boy with No Face in 2005, Gentleman Please 2008. I love this one, Frightening New Furniture 2010. What a title. The Ghost in the Lobby, well, Lobby, but Lobby for Mama in 2014. I know he worked in a hostel doing writing, a writer in residence, perhaps in hospital. I remember him talking about that. But this is called Sex and Death in Merlin Park Hostel 2019. Can't wait to read that one. He's in many, many anthologies. Satirist in residence with the alternative website, The Bogman's Canon, 2015 to 16. He's facilitated workshops at Galway Arts Centre. He's a creative writing at Galway Technical Institute for 15 years. He has published poems in various media outlets, including the New European, the Morning Star, no surprise there, Dissent Magazine USA, among others. Stinging Fly magazine has described Kevin as possibly the most widely read living poet in Ireland, and he is in my wee kitchen in Battlefield, Glasgow. How wonderful is that? And your kitchen and your living rooms. His work has been translated into Greek, Spanish, Italian, Japanese, Albanian, French, Russian, Portuguese. He's been on Radio 4, RTE Radio, Lyric FM, and this I also have to get hold of, Kevin. His extended essay called Thrills and Difficulties, Being a Marxist Poet in 21st Century Ireland was published last year. This year he was given 12 nominations for the position of Ireland's Professor of Poetry. And the book that I was referring to, Ecstatic, is his 6th collection and was published this year by Salmon Poetry. How privileged are all of you out there and us to hear from Kevin Higgins.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda, for that extravagant introduction. And I have to say thank you for the invitation. And thanks for setting this up. It's the lifeblood of poetry, really. Events like this, open mics, combining poetry and music, whatever which way. And I really hope this flourishes. The first poem I'll read is called Life, Death, and the Bit in the Middle. Life is books and underwear all over the floor. Death is everything in its place. The bit in the middle is mostly waiting for elevators. Life is a dog barking all night. Death goes about its business quietly. The bit in the middle is mostly waiting for the toaster to pop. Life is a series of clogged sinks. Death is absolutely clear. The bit in the middle is mostly hoping the doctor will call you next. Life is a philosophy student tossing a sweet wrapper into your garden and later phoning to claim responsibility. Death is no sweet wrapper ever. The bit in the middle is mostly thinking about the phone call you didn't make. Every life is its own particular mess. Death arrives impeccably dressed. I spent yesterday in the accident and emergency department in Galway with a issue, and We were saying a group of us sitting waiting to be seen. It's quite like prison, really. What are you in for? Now that you've made it this far down the corridor, it's not something small. Now, I write a lot of satirical poems, as Linda mentioned, and I often tell students, if you make fun of yourself, you will get away with it a bit more, not always, but a bit more when you do it to other people. And this poem is called Selfie. And George Orwell says, at 50, everyone has the face he deserves, which is a frightening thought, particularly when I'm on Zoom and I can see myself. My hair is the grass on the local five-a-side pitch at the end of the worst winter since 1947. My eyebrows, more than my personal groomer, the cat, can handle right now. My eyes are light blue jellyfish floating in increasingly opaque seawater. The fuzz up my nose and in my ears, that patch of grass the university groundsman keeps forgetting to cut. My ears, two elderly uncles successfully avoiding each other at opposite ends of a wedding. My skin, the well-tonned book you pick up in a charity shop and never get round to reading. In their last exam, my lungs got 53%, so won't be going to university unless I give them to medical science. My belly is one of those small insults you get away with because you've had champagne, but should generally keep itself to itself. My penis is a vintage car one only takes out every so often. My knees and ankles are machinery made almost obsolete by recent developments. The crack down the gable wall has moved and is now within me. Okay. Myself and Susan, who is unlucky enough to be married to me, we were doing a workshop with a group and she came up with the idea of doing getting them to write a curse poem. And I thought, that's interesting. Like a kind of a gypsy curse or something like that, or a modern day equivalent. So I wrote this. It isn't actually about any specific person, honestly. I got the first 3 lines. I got the idea from that in a tiny little article in the Irish Times. My wishes for you, that your son at Trinity College may graduate to become a rogue gynecologist, that his brother, the pediatrician, be suspended without pay, that your husband be caught selling wheelchairs that don't work live on national radio. And the day you discover all of the above, may the traffic wardens, every one of them, be East Galway Gestapo. May you lose your winning ticket and the gun not go off when it's supposed to. May your reflux be acid and your bowel be cranky. May your water forever be cloudy and the pharmacy be shut. May the funeral parlor refuse you and the lies you told haunt you long after the cat has made a litter tray of your ashes. Okay, this is a poem from the Sex and Death at Merlin Park Hospital book. And it is Odysseus, I think, had the worst midlife crisis in the history of Western literature, it's fair to say. And the original poem title of this poem was How to Deal with Inappropriate Crushes. And I always show poems to my wife, Susan, and she said to edit, and she said, I like that, but you might change the title, make it something more classical, because otherwise people might think that this was real rather than imaginary. And I thought, of course. So it was how to deal with inappropriate crushes. It is now advice to a modern Odysseus after Homer. Spend hours convincing yourself that the object of your lust is the sort who takes milk in her bovril and probably eats cold Brussels sprouts by the basin load. Though even if she did, you know, it wouldn't matter in the least. When you think of texting her, employ local youths to tie you to the nearest available electric fence and leave you there. When you eventually wriggle free and still can't stop picturing her, pay your neighbors the entire street in advance to arrange an orchestra of chainsaws to block out any possibility of her. Join the Workers' Revolutionary Party, Lower Salt Hill branch, and spend the next 15 years racing around the place, saying the words hegemonic, neoliberal, neocolonialist, until no one anywhere will talk to you. And when even this fails to kill your want, and ask a kindly nun to drive a forklift truck angrily first your left foot, then you're right. When you come round in hospital, still muttering her name, become a small-time religious fanatic and spend your evenings wisely, going door to door, flogging your own personal Jesus or Satan. Behind the wife's back, smuggle yourself in a taxi to the vet, bringing the cat along for moral support, and beg him to apply his trusty wire cutter to your troublesome bit. And when he refuses, publicly volunteer to unblock, free of charge, other people's sewers, any time of the day or night, to remind your nostrils what everything in the end turns into. So that's a bit of helpful advice. And the next one, Klaus Andersson, a Swedish poet, actually lives in Finland and writes in Swedish. I read a translation of a poem he had, Things You Should Know About Andersson. So I thought, this has possibilities. So Things You Should Know About Higgins, after Klaus Andersson. Higgins is not surprised to hear his name is Viking, that his origins are people who were big into pillage and the thing that usually goes with pillage. Higgins sometimes tells those who ask if they're related that the president is his illegitimate father. Higgins visits Czechoslovakia in his dreams, usually while he's awake. If Higgins had business cards, they would say poet and hitman. Higgins looks forward to one day actually killing someone. Higgins isn't exactly joking. When Higgins says, you think so, the conversation is over. Higgins can't drive, Higgins can't swim, but apart from that, Higgins knows everything. Higgins never repeats himself, except always. Higgins disagrees most of the time, especially with himself. Higgins isn't planning to get a new kitchen ever, but suggest a way. Higgins secretly thinks the old wallpaper should be reinstalled. Higgins wants for Christmas a long leather coat, the sort interrogators used to wear in what Higgins calls the good old days. Higgins thinks you're just jealous. Higgins feeds stray cats slices of ham out the back window when none of the family is watching. in the hope they might come back. They do, same time every night, and then one night they don't. Okay. And this is more helpful advice. How to survive next winter, which is now almost here. And I think this is probably going to be uploaded on the government websites around Western Europe. How to survive next winter. Turn off the heat. Instead, warm yourself by setting fire to your free weekly copy of the Galway Advertiser. Be sure and arm yourself with extra by liberating them from your neighbours' letterboxes. Sit in the dark, preferably alone, so you don't spread the pox to anyone else. Wearing a cheap pair of unsustainable sunglasses, they're the only luxury we'll allow you. Get extra underwear second-hand from your local mortuary. I hear they plan to start selling them out of the back of the hearses for which they can no longer afford petrol. There are bargains to be got. Exercise personal responsibility. Begin eating spiders, dandelions, and for calcium, each other's toenails, but only as a weekend treat. The notion of eating each day is a pre-war social construct. Spend the October bank holiday rolled up in an old carpet, and Christmas writing limericks. There was a young man from Killiney whose plans for world domination were stymied. Okay, this second last poem is not exactly topical, well, kind of. And I felt out of respect that I absolutely had to read it, given the week that is in it, as we would say. And it is written, it is kind of a found poem. It is written in the voice of Prince Andrew. And it was, I watched the Emily Maitlis, the recording of the Emily Maitlis interview a couple of times, but also in January when I wrote this, Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, the pages, the actual jottings were posted on Twitter, and they made amusing reading, particularly for a disturbed mind like mine. And one word that Prince Andrew kept saying during that interview was, "It all depends." The first two lines of this poem actually are from Bill Clinton, who was a man who also had a very flexible approach to language and other things. It all depends. It depends what the meaning of is, which depends what the meaning of isn't is, which depends what you mean by my hand, which depends what I mean by not around her waist. It depends on the meaning of no, which depends on the meaning of don't, which depends on the meaning of a house in Belgravia, which depends on the meaning of March the 10th, which depends on the meaning of a Pizza Express in Woking. It may also depend on the meaning of Prince Michel of Yugoslavia, what the meaning of Annabelle, Maxine, and Amber is, what the meaning of Jeffrey's apartment for models is, what the meaning of Brian Ferry's phone number is, what the meaning of people from the United Nations is, and what the precise meaning of going on is, which may well depend, for all I know, on what the meaning of Linda Spankman Massour is. It definitely depends what is meant by foot massage, which depends on what you mean by down, what I mean by there, and what we both understand by young Russian woman. And it all turns on the significance we attach to the words nothing happened, and at most 3 times. And the final one is a poem really about how a lot of the things that we think we know are made up by someone else. For all you know, nothing is there in quite the way you see it. The land your house stands on is not as you imagine it. If you listen to what the stones say, you'd know the other side. The piece of paper that says you own it is just a thing some guys made up, like the Book of Deuteronomy or US Constitution. The woman you're married to, her name has names of which you know nothing. The noises coming out of your television set are not what they claim to be. Even your doctor is impersonating himself. The words you have for yourself are not exactly wrong, but just a small part of the equation. Your tactics are something over which you don't have ultimate control, but a kind of religion, which other people experience as a series of elbows in the unpleasance to be repeated until the next tactic comes along. The hates you would, if you could, pay someone to wipe away in a multi-story car park, like you just scrubbed the cat vomit off the living room carpet. The woman you want to take to a hotel room and do things to, or have her do things to you. The pair of furrowed eyebrows, probably false, who always convinces you come election day to vote for them. There is always something, some secret driving you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I really hope that you don't put a curse on me. That was like the cat litter. Yeah, I would not like that.
I never would.
But I think I'm going to try a curse poem. Yeah, I've got a few people that I would like to think about on those terms. Thank you very much. That was joyous. Thank you. So that's us again at the end of the evening. I hope you've all enjoyed yourself. Yes, and I just want to say thank you again to Rachel McJury, Jo Gilbert, David Stakes, Katharine McFarlane, Kevin. Yep, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Yeah, Kevin and Linda Jackson for hosting us tonight. Thank you very much. We will be back in November and we will be going live at some point, but if you keep an eye out for the link coming up for tonight, and I hope you have enjoyed tonight, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Loved your work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.